Today and through much of the week, I am a little bit anxious and burdened, praying a lot because I know that we have a team this week that is traveling in some dangerous parts of the world. And it makes me anxious, to be honest. And I try to channel that energy, that nervousness into prayer for God's protection and for us to achieve the goal that is sending us into these more dangerous places around the world. We typically go to a lot of places in the world, but they're not all that what I would call dangerous. But this might be an exception to the rule. And it causes me to think about not only inviting us to be sober-minded and prayerful in our work, but to reassess and to remind myself of some of the great costs that others have made in advancing the gospel around the world through the ages. I think of some of the early missionaries that went out to dangerous places. Jim and Elizabeth Elliot is one that comes to top of mind. They went to the country of Ecuador back in 1955, 56 time to reach out to a particular tribe of people that had a reputation for violence. They were called the Waorani people, and they were very violent. And Jim and Elizabeth Elliot and four other couples resolved in their hearts that they were going to reach out to this tribe in the name of Christ and to make the gospel known to them, as has been done throughout all the world. In fact, all of medical missions today was really birthed out of people going out and caring for the sick and the elderly and the diseased, and starting medical clinics and medical hospitals, and through all of that, introducing a worldview that God is the creator and has loved us and has even sent his son to die for us, and that as much as we love their temporal life and want to save them and serve them with good health, we care even more about their eternal well-being and being reconciled to the gospel through Jesus Christ. And that's what motivates missionaries for centuries going into very hard and dangerous places with the gospel. So here's a picture of Jim and Elizabeth Elliot in around 1955, 56, as they and a group of others went down to Ecuador. And they knew that it was dangerous, but they were also trying to be very prudent and careful about their outreach at the same time. And in 1956, in January, about 69 years ago now, in January of 1956, they started to fly a plane over this part of Ecuador with loudspeakers and speaking in their indigenous language, reaching out to this tribe of people below, telling them they've come as friends. And over several weeks, they also dropped from that plane buckets of gifts and tools and other ways of communicating their best and good intentions to reach out to them. And finally, they decided it was time to land the plane by the river and begin a personal direct communication with them, which they did. And some of the men came out to meet them, and it looked like things were going pretty well in terms of establishing some sort of a friendship. They even took one of these men up into the plane and gave him a little ride in the plane. So they were very encouraged in that sense. And they were writing letters. They didn't take their wives with them on this trip. They left them in a much more safer zone, knowing that there was a calculated danger there. They wrote some letters, and then all communication ended. And in this search, they found all 5 men had been slaughtered by the river by this tribe that they're reaching out to. They found Nick Saint, the pilot of the plane, with a spear right in his head. others that had been gashed by machetes and spears collectively. So it was a horrible tragedy. A few weeks later, after this, Life magazine came out with an article about the death of these men and how they had sacrificed their lives, the shedding of their own blood, in an outreach to bring the gospel, the good news, to this group of people needing to hear the gospel and the good news, just as the Lord called us to do. That got a lot of attention, and it stirred other people to follow in their footsteps. And later on in 2005, this was made into a movie called The Point of the Spear. Jim Elliot's wife, Elizabeth, has been one of the most prominent, well-known leaders of the evangelical church for decades. She's passed away now. But she wrote a book about this called Through Gates of Splendor that has influenced many, many people of my generation. She would have been my grandmother, in effect, because I was born in 1955, so I could have been one of her babies at that time. But she wrote this book called Through Gates of Splendor that was widely read and inspired many, many people to also be willing to shed their own blood, if necessary, in order to answer God's call to bring good news to the guilty, and to do so in life-enhancing ways, whether that was Bible translation or starting hospitals or orphanages or whatever kinds of ministry of mercy that God was stirring them to do. So I just wanted you to know that when we go to a place that is not safe and that we wouldn't bring other people to, we do so knowing of the dangers, but also knowing that we are carrying out our own endless line of splendor throughout the generations and throughout the centuries, really, of people who've done amazing things and at great cost, even occasionally at the cost of their own lives. That book that Elizabeth Elliot wrote, Through Gates of Splendor, I actually found a first edition copy of that in a bookstore, and I purchased it for my daughter, who was at Wheaton College at the time and wanted to go into missions. Because I knew Elizabeth Elliot personally, since I lived up in Boston and she lived in New England, we went up to see her. I took my daughter up to see Elizabeth Elliot and to ask Elizabeth to sign this book as Megan was preparing to go off to Asia for the sake of the gospel. And so here's a picture of my daughter standing next to Elizabeth Elliot. This is a few years before she passed away. And it was a very powerful moment for me and for my daughter as we gathered our strength from the scripture and from church history to go off and do hard things. And that's what we're doing together. And I just want to give you a quick update. This was in Ecuador that Jim Elliot and Nate Saint and others lost their lives. Today there's tremendous amounts of gospel work in Ecuador. And here's a picture of a missionary partner of ours who's taken one of our handheld ultrasounds that many people have helped us purchase and get to hard places like Ecuador. And in this picture, you can see that she is has a young mother is laying on a bench, and she's got a iPad on the table there, and all these people are just there. The kids are coming over. They all want to see this little baby on the ultrasound. Here's a second picture of the same thing where you can actually see her using the handheld ultrasound with these people just fascinated by what this missionary doctor is providing for their village. All this to say that the sacrifices that we make today, even if they are great sometimes, even if they're the ultimate sacrifice sometimes, God uses to rally his people and to follow in our footsteps in this endless line of splendor to accomplish great things in the saving of the innocent and in bringing good news to the guilty. I'm excited about 2025. We're going to be in a lot of places this year, some of them more dangerous than others, but whether there's danger or there's not, whether everything goes well or everything goes not according to plan, whether there's some breakthroughs or whether there's some pushbacks and hardships, this is the work that we have voluntarily signed up to do. And I hope that you have too, that in your own life you have voluntarily said, here I am, Lord, send me. And that you're faithfully doing that, whatever that looks like in your life. We want to be committed to a tremendous self-sacrificing, risk-taking, personally willing obedience. This is the kind of love that we want to have in the world today. It's the kind of love that the world needs. It's the kind of love that opens eyes and open hearts. And that's what we're about at our mission here at Passion Life. So pray with me and carry the burden with me and make the sacrifices in your own life, trusting that the Lord will always honor it to the praise of his glorious name. Thank you.